We are live.
Hey, so hello everybody. I'm so excited to be here with you and also with Lexi Ryan. It's very exciting, everything. As you know, this is the first day of FestivalYA, FestivalYA, and we have a best-selling author, Lexi, with us.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for accepting our invite and thank you for being here. We are so, again, excited and happy and cannot wait to hear more from you and about your book. So my initial thought was that I will ask you some questions. And if you have more details or some tea for us or some brand new information about your second book that will come this year, right?
Yes.
We will be happy to hear that. So if you don't mind, please present yourself, a couple of words. Everybody knows that you're an author, you wrote this Valor House, some sexy, hot YA romance, contemporary, so we already know this, but we want to see another part, another view of you.
Okay. Well, my name is Lexi. As you know, I was an English professor for about 10 years, but I always wanted to be a writer. It has been something I've been working on since I was very young. I love that you can make something where there wasn't anything before and just with that make connections with other people. I'm the youngest of 7 kids. There are 7 children in my family, and I think because of that is why making connections between people who maybe think they don't understand each other otherwise is so important to me. And I think fiction has the power to do that. I love to take characters who make decisions that we at a glance might think we disagree with and then make readers understand exactly why that character would make that decision. So so I've been writing full time since 2013. I left my job as an English professor just so I could spend my days writing books, and I hope to always get to spend my days writing books. It's my favorite thing, and I'm so happy to be here. I have 2 kids. They're 10 and 14, a boy and a girl, and they're awesome. My 10-year-old girl has been begging to read These Hollow Vows. And I kept saying, you can read it when you're 12. You can read it when you're 12. Because she is very mature for her age. We talk about everything. She is, read all the Twilight books. She's watched all of the Vampire Diaries. So I kept saying, you can read it when you're 12. Well, she wouldn't leave me alone about it. And so I thought, she's probably going to get bored with it. So I said, okay, you can go ahead and read it. I thought maybe she'd make it in a chapter. This was maybe a week ago. She's already almost halfway through it. So I love it. She's like my youngest fan, she's probably my biggest fan. She's such a big supporter, and she's such a cool kid. Both my kids are really cool, but they're very different. And so I'm excited to be able to do this and be able to share that with my family too.
That's so nice. That's amazing. Thank you for telling us this. As I said, I will start with some questions, and then if everybody or somebody wants to ask, please be free. First thing first, we're taking it slow, and then on the spicy ones, let's say. When did you first realize that you wanted to be a writer?
I was in 2nd grade. So here that's like 7 years old, I think, maybe 8. Elementary school, grade school. And I'd found an empty journal under my bed, and it was just small and there was nothing written in it. And so I started to write this story and I thought it was the coolest thing. It was not a good story. I took it downstairs and showed my mom and my sister, and they both looked at me like I was crazy because I was so excited. And my sister was mad because it was her journal, and my mom like just didn't get the story. It was about a little girl named Spam who ran away and lived on blueberries in a tree. and so it's not like the first thing I wrote, I was like, amazing, awesome, incredible. No, not at all. Like I knew at that moment that I wanted to write, but it was a long time before I got like any real recognition for it. And then when I was a little bit older, probably 12, 13 years old, I would write like high school soap opera style things and pass them around class. And my friends would read them and want to be like in the script one way or another. And that's when I realized how much I liked the sharing part of writing, the connections. I've always wanted to do it. And then I started reading romance around 12 too, maybe a little young, but I started reading romance novels and I knew I want to write romance. I love happily ever after. I love the feelings that you get when the love interest, like that longing and that angst and the push and pull. So yeah, I really just, this has always been who I am. I went to college for writing and got a graduate degree in writing because this is always who I've been and what I've wanted to do.
Amazing. Congratulations. And look, right now we are a big writer. Are you the only writer in your family?
Yes. My oldest sister wrote a short memoir just for herself, but I don't think she really identifies as a writer. I have two brothers who are very talented artists, and one of them, the older of the two, drew the map that's in these hollow vows. So I don't think I have a copy of that map right here, but the map inside the book, my brother Aaron is the one who drew that. Yep, that's the one. Yes.
Amazing.
So there are some very talented artists in our family, but I'm really the only one who identifies as a writer, though several of them are very talented writers. They just don't do much with it.
Cool. What inspired you to write these hollow vows?
So in the United States, we've been going through some very rough years politically. And personally, I was going through some things too. And I've always loved writing contemporary romance, but I just felt so frustrated and powerless when I looked around the country and around the world and the things that were happening. And I needed to write something where I could have a girl who could defeat monsters and could overcome. And I wanted to, there's a line that Finn says to Bree in the book. He says, "May you always have a star to wish on and a reason to believe." And I've been writing that as a signature for readers since 2013. I have a romance novel called Wish I May, where it's all about, they're always talking about stars. And so I've been writing that in people's books since 2013. And I was like, I needed that. I needed to have a reason to believe for myself. And so that took me to fantasy, to have that opportunity to really show in a non-contemporary way people overcoming evil that seems insurmountable sometimes.
Thank you for sharing this with us. We know that a lot of people, readers especially, love your book. But in the same time, we know that there are some readers that don't like your book. How do you cope with this? Or do you ever read your negative reviews, and how do you find them? Like, are you inspired by them? Do you think that it's like an analysis?
Yeah, let's see how to put this. Anytime you have a work of fiction, it's not for everyone. And that as the writer, I understand that, like, intellectually, I'm totally okay with the fact that there are going to be people who don't like what I wrote, who don't like what I did for any number of reasons. And that is fine, because it's just not the book for them. And then there are going to be people who love it, and that makes me feel really good. But I try not to read any reviews, good or bad. My husband laughs at me because he says I could read a glowing 5-star review and I would find something in it to make myself feel bad about. You know, like it can be like one word that I'm like, ooh. So it just puts me in a bad headspace. I think it's very important to grow and learn as writers. And some writers read their reviews and use that as something to learn from. And I think that that's awesome that they can do that. But I realized really early on that instead of learning from them, I was making it difficult for myself to write more. So I choose to allow my editorial team to teach me and guide me and push me to do better where maybe things could be better. And they probably know more about my reviews than I do, but that's okay. So it's not that I'm not trying to do better or trying to grow. It's just that I narrow in who I'm learning from, because once a book is out there, it's done. And so instead of focusing on how I could have done something different in that, I want to focus on what's next and how can that be better than what I would have written if I wrote it last year.
Yeah, that's also like a pro tip for new writers. Always trust your gut, always write the story that you want to write.
Yeah. And it's better. The stories that you write because you're just hungry to write the story, they make more compelling stories. It's almost as if readers can feel that in the text. They can feel that drive. There's just something, I don't know, it's almost mystical to me, like this magical thing that happens when the writer is just so hungry to write it.
Yeah. And that being said, what was the hardest scene for you to write in your book?
Oh dear. Honestly, probably the scene where she first comes to Fairy. She's seeing it all for the first time, and I tend to be light on description, like intentionally so, but it was also really important in that moment to show how different this world, though it is everything that we're familiar with from the human world, it just looks brighter and more vivid and more lush. And so to try to share that information without getting bogged down in description was a little tricky. Trying to think what else was tough. I don't know. Everything's kind of tricky in its own way. I'm a big reviser. I really enjoy getting stuff on the page and then going back and making it better. So that's the part of the process that I actually enjoy most. Because I know the first time I write it that I'm not happy with it and that I'm going to rewrite it. And so my first drafts tend to be less fun for me than revisions. And not all authors feel that way, but I like revisions because that's when I see it actually starts to be closer to what's in my head when I'm revising. Whereas when I'm just first putting it on the page, it can't compare with what I'm seeing in my head, with what I'm feeling. So during revisions, I finally get closer, and that's really enjoyable to me.
Oh, that's nice. If our readers have any questions, just raise your hand and open your camera so we can know. And while everybody's thinking of a question, I have one more, if it's okay.
Of course.
For a new writer, what do you think is more important, the plot or the characters?
I will always answer characters, but it can't just be the characters are more important because of the changes they make. And, we talk about the character arc, and it's hard to have a strong character arc without a good plot that parallels what they're going through inside. So obviously they work in tandem, but if I had to choose an exciting plot or a fascinating character as a reader, I'm always going to choose the character, because I don't care about action and adventure if I don't care about the people going through it.
Does everybody have a question? Someone, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Right now. So, right now they don't.
That's
Say,
okay.
Please.
Do we know when These Twisted Bonds is coming to Romania?
Oh, that's a good question for me, apparently. So I know it will be released, I think, this summer. We are super excited for it. I'm excited for it, as I said.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited for everyone to read it. With a strong cliffhanger, some readers got really mad at me that they had to wait a whole year before they got book 2. So the whole time I've been like, if I could give it to you sooner, I would. And it's a good thing they don't let me hand out arcs, because I'd be giving early copies to everyone, because I just want everyone to have a chance to finish the story.
I know before we started this meeting, you said that the second book is your favorite.
Yes.
Can you tell them why? I know.
So, for a lot of reasons. Some I'm going to keep to myself because of spoilers. But my first reason that I can share with you is the beginning of the second book spends a lot of time in the wild Fae lands. So we have the Seelie Court, the Unseelie Court, and the wild Fae territory. And a big chunk of the second book is in the wild Fae territory, and their king is Misha, who is mentioned in the first book because he comes, but you don't really get to meet him until the second book. And I love Misha. I love him so much. And then a lot of the adventure that Bree goes on in the second book was just a lot of fun to write, but it was, again, more fun because of what she was going through inside. And there's a romantic angst in the second book that's like I love triangles. Sorry, I know some people hate them. I love triangles because I love that angst and that push-pull. And I really, really enjoyed writing that part of the second book.
So are your characters based on real people?
Never. I mean, I always say, like, there's a little bit of my husband in every hero I write, but they're fiction, like they become, as I write, they become their own people. And at first, part of the thing that is tough about getting into a story is I don't necessarily know them very well when I start writing. I try to figure things out, but it's as I get into it that I really get to know what the characters are like. And yeah, I enjoy that. I don't write in order. I write out of order and then piece things together. So I just write scenes as they come to me. And so one of the very first scenes that I wrote for these Hollow Vows, you might remember there's a scene with the shower. And that was one of the first scenes I wrote. Like the first thing I wrote, ended up being cut. It's actually her cleaning, and it wasn't important, so it got cut. And then one of the very first things I wrote after that was a version of that shower scene that evolved throughout the process of learning my story.
Yes, got it. Sorry for that.
That's
okay. So that being said, is the final book like the first draft, or it went through a lot of changes?
It goes through a lot of changes. My books, because I like revising so much, what I turn into an editor, what anyone else reads for the first time is very different than what I had in early versions. In fact, it evolves so much as I'm writing that if I didn't revise before I wrote later scenes, it wouldn't even make sense, because I change important chunks. And then, of course, after my editor gets it, there's more revisions happen. But I'd say the most radical revisions happen before anyone but me has read it, because I'm still trying to get my footing and get the story where I want it to be.
Oh, that's interesting. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of writers are outliners, so they make an outline and they figure out the story and then they write it, and that would be incredible. I think that sounds really nice, and I did that to a degree with this book, but some very important key details changed as I started drafting it, and it got better for it. Yeah, I'm just a big believer that sometimes the first idea we have isn't the most compelling. So we have to just kind of dig a little deeper and try to get to something better.
I think that was a little bit hard, especially that you've said that you don't write using the timeline. You write different pieces and then you combine them.
Yep.
And I think that's very different.
Yeah,
hard.
There are a few of us. I'm not alone. Some people refer to this process as being a quilter. So you're like taking pieces and quilting them together, like you're making like you would if you were making a quilt. I like that because I like the idea. I think as an analogy, it works really nicely, because sometimes we'll write this piece and it doesn't work. It needs to go, or it doesn't serve the story. And I find when I focus on the pieces that I am interested in, all the dragging parts don't get written because I don't need to write them, which means we get to skip the important stuff.
I've also received the message from my friend that I was telling you about before this meeting. She's asking, who's your favorite character?
Lark, the little girl, Preetha's daughter, Lark, is my favorite.
And why?
She is so awesome and also a little creepy. When I was young, my father was obsessed with Dune. Like, he'd read the book many, many times. And then when the movie came out, do you guys know the movie Dune? I don't know. Then when the movie came out with the sandworms, and so when the movie came out, he would watch it like on repeat over and over again. And so that little girl was like ingrained in my psyche with kind of the creepy eyes, and she told the future, and she was just like a little creepy, but also really awesome because she's young and female and really, really powerful. And it's a really cool combination to see. So I think that archetype, if you can call such a thing an archetype, was in my mind when I created Lark. But of course, Lark is a little softer, and she's also has her little girl side. But I love her. I think she's a lot of fun and just more powerful than she knows.
Damaris, please, you have a question.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi. First of all, do you hear me?
I do.
Okay, so I love your book. I really loved it. Like I remember that I read it in one sitting, and I can't wait to read your second book.
Thank you so much.
Also, if you have any other book in your mind, can you, or do you have some plans for the future? Can you tell us a bit about it? Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your question. There's this really kind of silly thing in publishing where we tend to not talk about books before we have final deals. So I can tell you that I definitely have plans and I have stories in my mind set in the same world, but nothing is finalized yet. But you should feel very optimistic if you want to see more in this world. I can say that much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
I am
you.
so excited. Like,
That means a lot to me. Thank
I
you.
love the Anseli and Sally world you created, and I can't wait to read more about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anna, I know you, please.
Yes, hello. So I wanted to ask you that maybe can you tell us something about the covers of the second book? They are gorgeous. And why is my left pin on the back cover?
Oh, yeah. So my publisher takes the book I've given them and creates a cover. And they'll send it to me or send a pretty close to final version to me when the artist is still working on it. And I give some feedback. And so they sent this cover to me and I said, and they said they had reasons for wanting Finn on the back cover. And they explained it and it made sense to me. And I said, I think you're going to have a lot of fans very upset that he's not on the front cover. and they were like, yeah, we'll just show the full thing a lot. And which is one thing to say it, but it's hard to actually show the front and back cover every time we talk about a book. But one thing that I like about it, because I wasn't sure what the solution was. You know, we wanted it to be different, you know, both of them, all three characters on the cover of book one. So we wanted it to be different. The idea that I had for the general visual of the cover was a little spoilery, so I'm not going to share that. So when they decided not to go that way and explained why, I was like, oh, you're right. Absolutely. And so I was like, okay, I think fans might hate this, but we'll see what happens. And honestly, I think it was more positive reaction than I expected because a lot of fans had that like instinctive, their knee-jerk reaction was, why is Prince Ronan on the cover? And then they see the back cover or someone tells them, go to this post and you'll see the back cover. And then they're like, oh, so it's kind of like this fun discovery process that they're both still there. I don't want to say too much because I almost feel like it's a little spoilery to talk about the way that the front and back covers can be meaningful, but I'd be interested to hear your thoughts after you read the book.
I cannot wait to read it, and I can actually feel that the angst, the drama in the cover. I just love it, and it was a pleasant surprise. I was scared for a second because I didn't see the back cover, and I didn't see Finn, and I was scared. But now that I know that it wasn't your idea in the first place, I'm gonna forgive you for that.
No, my idea had all three of them on the front cover, and maybe after book two's been out for a while, we can talk about what I pictured and why it would have been spoilery to have it. But yeah, my idea had all three on the cover again, and they just wanted to make sure it was different enough than book one, which makes sense.
I cannot wait to have it in my hands. And I have one more question.
Sure.
What character do you relate to the most?
Well, that's a really good question. So many characters in different ways. I relate to Bree is really angry. She is a really angry character, and that anger kind of fires her. It's the fire that sends her through so many difficult times and gets her through it. And the way that she would just do anything for her family, like that's the kind of family that I come from. Like you will go to any length to save your family. You will do what you have to do to protect your siblings. So I relate to that a lot. I also really admire Preetha, because Preetha has, she's a single mom, which isn't an experience that I've had, but both my sisters are single moms. She lost her husband, but she has this like kind of tragic backstory with her love affair with her brother's wife. So I don't know, I connect to her in a lot of ways too. I guess there's always any character I care about, there's going to be a piece in them that I really relate to, because that's how we make them compelling, right?
Thank you so much for your insight, and I love your book. It's fabulous.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It means a lot to me.
And I love the drama. I am a drama queen myself, and I love the drama. I love the backstabbing. I love everything.
Thank you. Me too.
Simona, please.
Hi, I hope you can hear me. So I'm so excited to finally meet you, Lexi. So I have a lot of thoughts right now in my mind. I have to say that I read the first book 4 times, so I know a lot of scenes by heart. I laughed a lot. I'm actually the translator for the series.
Oh, thank you so much.
No, thank you. Like I had so many nights like laughing out loud, like really. And by the way, that shower scene, God, it was so tormenting translating it to be so hot and making me feel like how can he resist? How can look at this male, how wonderful and backstabbing he is sometimes. But I just wanted to say that I really love the world building, all those supernatural creatures. I just fell in love with all that, with the band of misfits. Rita is still my favorite. Lark is adorable, and I think I would do actually anything to protect her. Finn is Finn. I would actually sell my soul for his wolves. I don't know why they're so fascinating. I just wanted them to appear more. And about the backstabbing and everything, well, yes, I think like every character likes me as well. And I have to say in the second book, I love Misha. Like he is now my favorite character from the series. And I'm so happy that you're going to hopefully write more books in this world, because like you made me care for characters that were already dead, like in the first book. Like I was actually suffering for Bree's mom, for everything that she went through, for Finn's brother. Like I actually care for someone that was just mentioned, and that's incredible for an author to do. And I was like right there suffering with them, and like maybe we can have, I don't know, like a prequel. I was just actually dreaming about that. So yeah, that as well. So I don't have actually questions, but I really wanted to thank you for creating all this world, for giving us such a lovely sister bond between Bree and Jess. Like I was so, how should I put it? Bree is always concerned about her sister. Like in every chapter, whenever she's with Sebastian or with Finn or Peter or with anyone else, she's always thinking, I have to save my sister. I'm doing this all for her. And I'm going to, I don't know, have my heart broken, have my soul broken as well, just to save my sister. And that's such a lovely bond. And I just maybe you can, I don't know, give us someday something about Jess. I'd love to see her story after everything that happens. And maybe, I don't know, she has a voice of her own. So that's about everything. So again, thank you for everything. And well, our readers really are excited for book 2. Really, really excited. And I'm not that mad at things on the back cover because it makes sense. And like the first day I received the cover, I just started analyzing every detail, and it actually makes sense. It's like every detail. So yeah, I think it's an amazing.
They really put a lot of thought into where they put things on that full wrap cover and why, and even down to like the color scheme on the cover. And I don't want to say too much more, but you've read it. Thank you so much for translating. That is such an important job. And I'm sure you understand that a good translation makes all the difference for whether or not a book does well in translation. So I appreciate that so much. I did want to say one of the things that evolved about this story by working with a publisher is that they wanted me to tell it in 2 books instead of 3. My initial proposal was for 3 books. And in that plan, I would have been able to do more with Preetha. I really wanted to give her, to do more with her as a subplot. And I didn't have time in 2 books, and to give Jess more of a voice. And so I'm hoping I can give Jess her own story. We'll just put it that way. And spend a little time with the other characters as well, while she really gets some time on the page to be a more fully fleshed out, because she just doesn't get as much time to really be a fully fleshed out character. Even she's probably even less so than the Misfits, because all we know her as is as Bree sees her. And Bree sees her as sweetness and light and good and all the things she's, to her sister is all the things she's lacking, right? Like she just thinks that all the goodness between them is in Jazz. So therefore Jazz is worth preserving at any cost. And while I think that's a wonderful, I love the way Bree sees her sister, it's also not, we're all more than that, right? Like we're more complex than the way our big sister sees us. I certainly hope I'm more complex than the way my big sister sees me. So I'm really excited about potentially being able to give her own story and get her on the page and show her complexities. And I think it would be, I'm really excited for what I have planned. I just hope I get to tell the story.
Fingers crossed if we can help. I don't know, something, but I really hope to read that story as well. We always know how Bree thinks about her sister. I was always wondering, what was Jazz thinking when she was in the dungeon kept by Mordios? Or what does she really think about the Fae? Now she's very scared. She doesn't want to hear about them. She doesn't want to go back to their realm. But I don't know. I think there's a lot to be said about her as well as the other characters. I mean, I have to say that like I was at one point, I think I was falling in love with Kane. Like he had
I love him. Yes. I love Kane so much.
Like the first time when he appeared, I was like, Bree, oh God, he's so scary with those eyes and dots. But he's like a softie, and there's that scene. I can't say anything, but there's a specific scene in book 2 when he appears, when he doesn't, and stuff. But no. Overall, this band of misfits that I would just read books about them, just having tea, or I don't know, going on a hunt or anything, just to hear that bickering and everything. So thanks again, Lexi. It was a real honor for me to meet you.
Well, thank you. And again, thank you so much for your work.
Somebody asked, kiss, marry, kill with your characters.
And which 3?
They didn't said. I think you have your whole book to choose from.
Oh, goodness. It's always hard to answer these with, I'm going to say Kiss Misha. Oh, but I might want to marry Misha too. It's hard to answer. I'm gonna beg off this question because every answer I think of in my head is kind of a spoiler. You know what I mean? And I don't want to spoil anything.
That being said, I can't ask you who's your favorite ship? Or what's your favorite ship?
That's dangerous too. No.
People right now are like, spill the tea.
That's dangerous. No. I see all possibilities and enjoy exploring all possibilities. Who's your favorite ship?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I mean, honestly, at this point, having moved away from book 2, I'm still hung up on Preetha and Amira. But I don't want to say. Yeah, I mean, like, can we get some resolution there? But
I think I'm still waiting for book 2 because I think you were preparing something for us, and I don't know on what ship we'll sail. If you have, if everyone or somebody has a question, again, sorry. Yes, please.
So first I want to say that I really enjoy your book, and I read it in one night. I just can't stop reading because I need answer. I mean, the whole book just is like a hurricane in my mind, and I really need answer, and I really like in, I think, 3 hours.
Thank you so much.
And I want to ask you, how do you think about the idea of the book? How do you get the inspiration to write it?
Oh, that's always tough. I usually start with characters. So it's some personality trait or moment that sticks in my head that makes me want to write that character. So the first image I started with for Bree was her scrubbing the floors in this world that is very much rigged against her. And she, in this scene that I wrote that didn't end up anywhere in the book, she's scrubbing the floors and staring at her boss's safe and thinking, I just need the money that's in that safe. So that was like the image that first started with her. And my first image with Sebastian was his friendship with not just Bree, but Bree and Jazz, and like how the three of them were friends, where, you know, you had this kind of quiet longing on Bree's side. And, you know, you don't really know where he stands with it all at first. And of course, my first image of Finn was that shower scene where he's not taking what he's being offered. And that seemed very significant to me. So, yeah, so I usually start with characters and snippets of moments, which if you heard me say earlier that I like write out of order, maybe makes sense. And then I can kind of try to get into their heads and figure out why these things are true and what would matter more to this character than anything else. So I think what really matters to Sebastian, what really matters to Finn, what really matters to Bree. And I try to use that to create a world where it feels like it's impossible to win. because I like high conflict. I think high conflict, even in my contemporary romance, I like just lots and lots of conflict. If there's just like, oh, they're happy, they're walking into the sunset, like in the middle of the book, then I'm bored. Like I want lots of conflict. I want them to go up against insurmountable odds. So I try to like tease that out of what matters most to them.
Yeah, I want to say that I'm not a fan of love triangles, but I love this love triangle so much, and I was surprised that I love it because I know because always like the one I like is doesn't end up with the but here I like Sebastian too, and I like Finn too, and I don't know what I want to choose between them. And I'm so glad for that I can speak right now with you because
well, thank you so much for being here. I love love triangles, and I especially love to make people who don't like love triangles say, I don't like love triangles except for this one. That's like, it feels like a moment of triumph for me.
well, it's true. You make this love triangle so good, and it's just perfect.
Thank you so much.
Bianca, please.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hello.
First, I want to say that you made me love fairy world. Like I adore it now, and I have to admit that I bought the book without knowing anything about it, not seeing it on TikTok or nothing. And the question is, which of the male characters is your favorite?
Of the two, I don't want to answer that. Spoil anything. I'm gonna go with Misha. We'll just choose Misha because that's a safe answer.
Okay.
I know they want answers, and I'm like, not gonna tell you. You have to wait for book 2. I think once you read book 2, you will understand who is my favorite and why.
Okay.
Sorry.
We should be patient.
It's hard.
It's okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we need to expect something tragic in book 2? Oh my God, your reaction.
You need to expect that nothing is simple. Nothing is simple. That's all. And it shouldn't be, because then it wouldn't be fun to read.
Alexia, please, yes.
So in this Hello Voice, there was any like chapter or maybe scene that you wanted to be in the book, but I don't know, the editor told you that it was a no, and what it was. Can you tell us?
Yeah. So, and I understood why we needed to cut it. So I'm fine with the fact that it's not. But if you notice, there's kind of a Cinderella theme with Brie. I mean, thus her name is Abriella. I was trying to play off Cinderella. So in an earlier version of the book, when she first goes to Fairy, she gets a potion that makes her look Fae, and makes it so other Fae can't scent her as human. And she has until midnight before the potion wears off, which I liked because of the Cinderella, and you have till midnight before, the carriage turns into a pumpkin. And I was just kind of playing off that Cinderella theme a little bit more, but it took more time, more explanation, and we really needed to get her to Fairy and get things moving. So we ended up cutting that, and I think it was definitely the right choice, but I had to, you kill your darlings, right? And let go of that little extra Cinderella nod that I had there.
And do you have any advice for young writers?
Yes, I do. It's very important. Are you listening? You have to keep going. You have to write and you have to keep writing. And when you feel like you've failed, because it'll happen, you'll feel like that. You haven't until you quit. So just don't quit. You can take a break. You can say, I'm sick of this for now. I want to step away. But it's tough. It is such a tough career. But all you have to do, the key, and it's way more difficult than it can sound, and way simple too, is persist. Just keep going. Just keep writing and keep trying to tell a story that the world wants to hear, or that an agent wants to hear. I had so many moments in the years leading up to publication that I just felt like, it makes me really emotional. I don't want to cry. I felt like the best thing I could do for my family, because I had a full-time job, I had children, and I felt like it would be so much easier for my family if I just let go of the dream of writing, if I just quit. But I didn't know how to be me and not be a writer. And so I didn't quit, but if I hadn't persisted when it seemed like I'd lost, if I hadn't persisted when it seemed like I'd failed, I wouldn't have this amazing career that I have right now. And an amazing career that has done a lot of amazing things for my family too, that has provided them with a mom who's more available during the day, because I have a flexible schedule, opportunities to travel to really cool places. I'm the primary breadwinner in my home. So instead of feeling guilty that I'm spending family money on writing conferences, now it's, thank goodness mom's a writer, because we can, not have to worry about financial things as much. And I'm very lucky in that. But I think a lot about how guilty I felt for many years for continuing to pursue something that, if I looked at all the evidence in black and white, if I looked at all the rejections and all of the times I'd hit my head against the wall and just failed, it seemed like the right thing to do was to quit. And if I'd done that, I wouldn't have all this. If I'd done that, I would be a writer who was trying to convince herself she wasn't a writer. So I think from the outside looking in, a lot of times it seems like we decide we want to be writers. So we write a book and we're successful, and then we write another book, and that's it. When the reality for most people, that happens for some people. I always resent them a little. They're like, oh, I wanted to write a book, so I did. And then I sold it for $1 million. And then I'm like, that doesn't happen. That is not normal. But most of us have this very long journey before we get somewhere that resembles success. And just once you do persist and you have little moments of triumph, just make sure you celebrate all those little moments, whether it's an agent wants me to submit a partial after reading my query, or this editor wants to read the full manuscript, or I won this contest, whatever little triumphs, you have to take a moment to celebrate them, because it's a tough industry to break into. But if you're a writer and you persist and you're able to break in, it's so worth it. It's so worth it, because you just, when storytelling is in your bones, you can't just walk away from it. It's part of who you are.
I wanted to tell you that I'm writing a book, and I also do the thing that I'm writing a chapter, could be like the end of the book, and then I'm going back from the first few chapters. And
you're in good company. It seems silly to anyone who writes linear, but there are quite a few of us, believe it or not, who write that way. It takes more revision, but like I said, I love revision anyway, so it's fine. So whatever gets words on the page for you is the right way for you. Don't worry about the right way for someone else. It's going to be their way. You do it your way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Somebody asked, have you ever gotten a writer's block?
Yes. Yes. currently am struggling. I hope you won't mind that I'm sharing personal stuff. I don't know how not to. That's just also part of who I am. But in November, so my father has dementia, and his girlfriend's been caring for him since he was diagnosed 8 years ago. And in November, she passed away quite suddenly. And I'm the only child who's local to him. And so I'm power of attorney. I take care of all the things. And so quite suddenly, I had to get him moved out of his home, find him a safe place to live, take over his medical care, which he'd been totally neglecting because he didn't want to go to the doctor, so she didn't make him. He didn't want to deal with this, so she didn't make him. He didn't want to take his meds, so she didn't make him, which I understand. You know, she's the girlfriend, not the nurse. But I'm the daughter, and I'll be rude. I'll say, no, we're going to the doctor because the doctor wants to see you. You know, I'm mom. I'm like suddenly a mother to my father. And then all of his affairs need to be dealt with as well. So I suddenly went from mother, writer, business owner to someone who's like, it almost became a full-time job taking care of my father and trying to deal with all this stuff. And the biggest part of it wasn't the time, but how emotionally taxing it was. He wanted to stay in his home forever, and he wasn't safe there. So I had to make the decision to find a safe place for him, even though that wasn't what he wanted. Now, he does have dementia, so within a couple days, he just doesn't even remember that he hasn't been there forever. But it was hard. It was emotionally taxing. There's a lot of guilt. And I find myself too mentally exhausted when I sit down at the computer. Even when I have a couple hours, I'm just mentally drained from all of the very hard decisions I've had to make on behalf of my dad. And that has been the closest thing to writer's block that I've ever experienced. And I think that it's less about, you know, being blocked, so to speak, and more about not caring for my own heart and soul. And to overcome it, I have to do something that feeds me. I love story. So for me, that's reading and watching TV and, you know, like just filling the well, because I'm depleted and I need what gives me emotional energy back. And then I'm able to create again, little by little.
Thank you for sharing this with us. I have one more question. When you don't write, what do you do?
So writing is my job. I have about 30 stories, 30 books in my backlist. So I have this young adult fantasy and love this new part of my career, but the bulk of the books that are out are contemporary romance, and they are independently published. So I essentially run my own publishing company, and just keeping up with that backlist and making sure that, you know, we're still keeping the books relevant and running promotions. And the publishing side of that can be very time consuming. I like it. It's fun. The business loving part of me really loves it. But it's really, really time consuming. And then of course I have kids. I like to hang out with them. They're really cool. Yeah, I really like to spend time with my family. We like to play like tabletop games. My husband's a gamer, like D&D role-playing games. I don't know if you guys have D&D. Yeah. So he's that kind of gamer. And while I love watching people play D&D, I'm too obsessed with perfect story arc to play myself, because I'm like, no, we can't like leave that plot thread behind. We need to finish. So, but we like to play tabletop games as a family, just everything. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, my life is full. busy, but full.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Oh, I think that everybody said what they wanted to say.
Oh, thank you so much, you guys. I'm skimming through the chat and what I can read. I really appreciate everyone coming today and the great questions and for chatting with me. And I hope you have a wonderful festival.
Thank you as well for being here, and thank you for writing this book and the other books, and we cannot wait to read the second one.
I can't wait for you to read it.
We are super excited. Again, thank you for everything, and we are so happy for having you today with us.
Thank you for having me. You guys have a great day.
Thank you as well. Have a good day, everybody.